Loch Ness Legacy. Chapter 1. The fog rolled in across the dark waters of the loch as the old man gazed out from the crumbling castle ruins. He pulled his wool sweater tighter against the chill air, lost in memory. Angus closed his eyes and was transported back to that fateful morning over 60 years ago. He saw it all again, the ripples on the water, as the steamboat made its way down Loch Ness. The early morning mist clinging to the surface. Angus was 10 years old in 1938, just a deckhand, helping his father operate their tourist vessel. They were halfway between foyers and doors when a shimmering black shape emerged from the depths 50 yards to port. Angus grabbed the rail, squinting into the haze. He made out a long, curved neck and tiny head. The monster was huge, its rough skin glistening wet as it lazily moved across their path. "Dad, look!" Angus shouted. But his father was busy stoking the coal boiler below. The creature submerged slowly, then appeared even closer off the starboard side. This time Angus clearly saw the serpentine body, small flippers, and crisscrossed skin pattern. It seemed to study the steamship curiously before sliding into the cold abyss. "I saw it, Dad. I saw the monster," Angus yelled excitedly once below deck. Quit your nonsense, laddie. You're daft from the fumes," his father scoffed. But Angus knew what he'd seen. His father refused to alert any passengers or report the sighting, wary of ridicule. Over the years, Angus told the tale countless times, as a cautionary fireside story to scare his children, then as a fanciful legend for his grandkids. Few outsiders believed his sincerity, until young Lise came along. Angus smiled thinking back on his eager granddaughter, always wanting more details. He recounted that fateful glimpse of Nessie until she could recite every detail. Lise was fascinated, not dismissive like others. She shared his wonder at the mysteries lurking beneath the loch's icy waves. The old man sighed, knowing how he'd stoked her obsession. If only he'd kept the story to himself, instead of inspiring Lise's dangerous quest. But now she was gone, and the loch's secrets went with her. Chapter 2. Cryptozoology, the search for and study of animals whose existence or survival is disputed or unsubstantiated. Lise had stared in awe at the entry in the Young Scientist's Encyclopedia as a girl of 12. Cryptozoology, the study of hidden creatures like Bigfoot, sea serpents, and the Loch Ness Monster. She'd peppered her grandfather with questions about his Nessie sighting, hungry for every detail. Angus gladly told the tale again and again. Most children loved fantasy stories, but for Lise this passion never waned as she grew up in the small fishing village along the loch's tranquil shore. At university, she diverged from a traditional science track to begin tailored courses in marine biology and cryptozoology. The old bookish professors tutted and raised eyebrows at this peculiar hybrid curriculum. But Lise was undeterred. She would unravel the loch's forgotten mysteries. Angus smiled at her fierce dedication when she joined him on walks near their village on college breaks. "You'll find a beastie one day and make your old granddad proud," he would say. During a deep-sea ecology module, Lise wrote a speculative thesis paper titled Survey Methodologies for Cryptid Aquatic Megafauna. Her advisor, Dr. Murray, was skeptical, but grew reluctantly intrigued by her unique interdisciplinary proposal. "While scientifically dubious, my dear, your suggested survey techniques show promise: camera traps, sonar scanning, verified specimen retrieval," he said while reviewing the detailed outline. But practical application could prove elusive. Lise's resolve only hardened at the skepticism. She completed dual research degrees with honors, as ready as she could be to vindicate her grandfather's account. But who would fund such a fanciful expedition? The answer came unexpectedly when James Harwell, eco-entrepreneur and heir to an offshore drilling fortune, came across Lise's thesis paper online. Equally enthralled by the legend, he arranged a meeting in Edinburgh. "Miss Becks, I'm prepared to outfit your survey team with everything required," James declared over tea. "My late father always regretted never seeing Nessie himself. Find proof, and you'll have unlimited resources at your disposal." At last fate delivered an ally, both believer and benefactor. With James's enthusiasm and wealth, her dream expedition felt suddenly within reach. Chapter 3. Lise could hardly contain her excitement reviewing equipment requisitions in the Edinburgh lab space James had secured. Sonar, mini-submarines, underwater drones. Any survey tech she desired was approved. She decided to start modestly, not wanting to become overwhelmed. Lise requested a research vessel, small crew, tracking stations, net systems, and underwater cameras to begin. James agreed happily, stating they could request additional assets anytime once operations commenced. Within a month, Lise stood dockside watching cranes load boxes onto their ship, r/v Nessie Hunter, specially outfitted for the long-term expedition ahead. Her hand-picked team of 4 seasoned marine techs she'd studied alongside made final checks of gear and supplies. Lise gazed out across the choppy matte gray waters of the loch, stirring in the chill autumn wind. Somewhere in those murky depths lurked proof of her grandfather's encounter decades ago. She would not fail him, no matter how long the search took. "All set, Lise. Let's go bag us a monster," said Robin, her second in command, giving her shoulder a squeeze. Lise nodded, feeling both profound purpose and gnawing self-doubt. As the lines were cast off, Angus sat huddled on the dock in his wool coat, giving a proud wave. He believed in her implicitly, but did the others? As the loch's undulating surface receded, Lise steeled herself for the challenges ahead. She would prove that science and myth could coexist by revealing Nessie as more than legend. Let them label her mission folly. History awaited those willing to believe. With spyglass raised, she watched the ruins of Urquhart Castle fade into the mist, imagining the serpentine silhouette she hoped to spot gliding across that same water soon. The towfish camera and scanning sonar were prepped and ready. After years of planning, the hunt had finally begun. The first week yielded several contacts on sonar appearing too large for typical marine life, though visibility on underwater video remained murky. While intriguing, the results were inconclusive. Patience and persistence would be vital, Lise reminded her crew. Near doors, they assisted a team deploying aquatic audio sensors across the loch bottom, part of a network already tracking clues inaudible to humans. Local fishermen kept them busy responding to new alleged creature sightings that always proved fruitless. But Lise's drive never waned. Each passing day brought them closer to piercing the obscuring veil across the loch's glassy surface. After nearly a month surveying the full length of Loch Ness, the crew's enthusiasm was waning. Clues mounted, but solid proof remained elusive. Robin suggested broadening the search beyond the loch into the river Ness, leading northwest to Inverness Firth, but Lise vetoed the idea, feeling it would dilute their efforts. She decided the ship would maintain essentially the same patrol route day and night. If the creature lived here, their vigilance would be rewarded. Privately, though, doubts began nagging Lise's mind. Had she dragged them all on a fool's errand to chase her childhood fantasy? Chapter 4. Another fruitless week passed without a clear sighting. Lise felt the crew's frustrations boiling to the surface. Gear malfunctions, morale lapses, complaining over the repetitive surveying. They'd accomplished little since that initial promising sonar contact, now 7 weeks past. She decided a crew meeting was needed to refocus. "I understand it's been challenging, but we cannot lose hope yet," Lise urged, trying to rally their flagging spirits around the wardroom table. "Unexplained phenomena exist below the waves. It is our duty to persevere." "Persevere towards what exactly, Lise?" Robin asked pointedly. "We've covered every meter of this loch countless times now. Maybe there just aren't any monsters left to find." The team shuffled awkwardly, not meeting Lise's eyes. "There have always been sightings here," Lise insisted. "My own grandfather." "Your grandfather saw a floating log or wave, nothing more," Craig, the sonar tech, interrupted dismissively. Lise felt her face flush with embarrassment and anger. "How dare you? I know what I'm doing. Your doubt proves you're not cut out for real field science," Lise snapped back. An uncomfortable silence descended. She immediately regretted her harsh words, but the damage was done. Robin stood calmly and put a hand on her shoulder. "No one's doubting your skills or commitment, Lise, but we're running low on supplies and options. Let's rethink our approach while we're still rational." He gently ushered Lise from the room as the others looked on solemnly. Lise spent hours alone, reviewing every data point and contact log, desperate for some new anomaly to rekindle their fading optimism. But she found nothing concrete. Defiance battled despair in her heart. She wanted to believe her instincts and her grandfather's stories, yet the featureless green-black shroud of the loch haunted her nightly. What if there was nothing below but shadows? No, she couldn't accept that yet. The search would go on as planned. Lise realized she needed to smooth things over with the crew once tensions cooled. United in purpose again, breakthroughs were sure to follow. She refused to squander her grandfather's trust. The next evening, huddled in the lab listening to pings scan the depths, Lise made an impulsive decision. She would take over the overnight sonar shifts alone, letting the crew get unbroken rest. Back to basics, one watcher, eyes unwavering from the screen's flickering trace. The creature would emerge for those keeping vigil. As the crew slept, the loch became Lise's cold, dark domain. Thermos clutched for warmth, she tracked every anomalous blip with manic intensity. But still Nessie eluded her nets and sensors. Isolation and insomnia took their toll, her focus deteriorating each night. Fishermen claimed new sightings, keeping hope marginally alive. Lise clung fiercely to her grandfather's unwavering faith from the shore. Just when failure seemed certain, she noticed a faint sonar contact lingering at 450 meters depth offshore from doors. Too slow for a seal, possibly an optical illusion, but too tempting to ignore. She stared entranced as the dive planning screens reflected in her bloodshot eyes. A submersible was ready. Perhaps this contact held an answer if she pursued it alone. Chapter 5. Lise waited until after nightfall to slip away, not wanting her intentions thwarted. She left only a vague note, taking the DSV overnight for sonar verification. Hopefully the team wouldn't worry and try to intervene. Lise hurried along the water, the mini-sub's hatch held tightly under her free arm. This felt reckless and extreme, but she was past caring. Only results mattered now. Once offshore from doors, Lise methodically prepped the compact deep-sea vehicle. She'd logged over 50 supervised dives in advanced coursework and simulation, more than enough experience to pilot the mini-sub safely for a few hours. After double-checking oxygen gauges and ballast tanks, Lise eased the vessel into the black water. Its lights cut a glowing path into the gloom as she descended slowly. Sonar showed the contact hovering intermittently at around 450 meters, likely a thermal layer. Lise ran possibilities through her exhausted mind. A cluster of squid or fish confused by the instrumentation? Whales were known to transit the loch seasonally. She tried to curb her galloping imagination. Focus only on eliminating the contact as any known species, she told herself firmly. Let logic guide you. But intuition whispered that something extraordinary lurked in this cold, lightless realm. At 400 meters, the spherical passenger compartment began creaking under the enormous pressure. Lise checked internal structural integrity scans, still solidly in the green. She pressed on, the contact now tantalizingly near. Her pulse quickened when suddenly it vanished from sonar. Had it sensed the sub's approach and retreated? Lise hovered at the murky boundary between belief and fear, wondering if she'd acted recklessly. But it was too late for doubts or turning back. She refused to leave without answers. Minutes passed with no further trace on sensors. Lise prepared to ascend in disappointment when a rapid series of metallic scrapes rang against the hull. She jolted in her seat. No sea creature should be able to reach this submerged depth. Lise scanned external cameras, but could see nothing except suspended particles glittering in the lights. She waited, listening intently. Again came several clear, sharp impacts against the thick titanium hull. The sub's rocking confirmed it was not simply her imagination. Lise felt true fear creep in for the first time. Some massive creature was intelligently toying with the vessel. Alarm klaxons suddenly blared as multiple hull integrity alerts flashed red. Outer pressure seals were compromised. Lise didn't hesitate. She instantly jettisoned external ballast and fired emergency thrusters to launch the sub towards the wavering surface hundreds of meters above. Heart pounding, she muttered a silent prayer that the damaged seals would hold until she surfaced. But the creature had other plans. Chapter 6. Lise braced for the worst as warning sirens wailed, but miraculously the mini-sub remained intact during its uncontrolled ascent. She exhaled deeply only once the vessel broached the surface, bobbing atop the inky water. Whatever lurked at those extreme depths apparently couldn't withstand the decreasing pressures higher up. Lise was badly shaken, but knew she needed to get the damaged sub safely to shore before investigating further. After manually anchoring the rocking craft in a coastal shallow inlet, she dove into the frigid water and swam the remaining distance to shore. It was nearly 3 a.m., but Lise hurried straight to the research boat, swiping murky loch water from her eyes. She roughly shook Robin awake in his bunk. "Robin," it tried to breach the sub. At 450 meters down, she gasped, still catching her breath. "It knows we're watching." Robin just stared back in groggy confusion until awareness crept into his face. "Lise, you went down solo at night, damn it." He hurriedly pulled on waterproof coveralls, the trail behind his eyes. "Show me the sub now." Lise led him to the inlet, where the mini-sub listed among the reeds. Robin's expression darkened, examining the external gashes marring the smooth titanium. He whirled to face Lise, anger overcoming relief at her safe return. "Radical risks won't help anything. We need a new strategy, not defective subs and strung-out researchers," he lectured. Lise looked away, unable to meet his piercing gaze. "You're relieved of duty pending a review of this stunt. Get some real sleep." Lise started to protest, but knew that would only worsen matters. The isolation and relentless stress had warped her judgment. She'd become obsessed. Chastened, she retreated to her cramped cabin as the rest of the crew emerged to inspect the crippled submersible with puzzled concern. Sleep finally overtook her once the engines rumbled to life again, carrying the ship away from shore. In the following days, Lise kept to herself while the Institute director and an outside safety board reviewed her dive. The crew avoided her, only offering terse updates on repairing the mini-sub and hydrophone array. Lise felt profound remorse for her reckless decisions and the havoc caused, but part of her still clung privately to the deep-sea encounter. Something unnatural had attacked in those extreme depths. Proof was closer than ever now. She bided her time, expecting formal dismissal from command of the expedition any day. To her shock, the review board merely issued a severe censure and probation. Apparently, James Harwell's lawyers had intervened, not wanting his hand-picked team derailed when on the very cusp of success, or so he believed. Lise jumped at her improbable second chance. She vowed to lead the effort with wisdom moving forward. No more solo stunts. But James' intervention had bought her precious time, however limited. She would use it to finally redeem her grandfather's faith beyond any doubt. With a humbled heart, Lise embraced the crew upon returning to duty. No more secrets or taking needless risks, she promised earnestly. We all want answers, but we'll find them together. Morale seemed to perk up slightly, though some reservation lingered behind their weary smiles. Perhaps her words could restore the trust she'd nearly shattered. The hunt resumed with renewed cooperation, but privately Lise felt time was running short. Dread gripped her that the Institute might shutter this dream indefinitely. She gazed across the loch's glassy expanse night after night, willing some sign to emerge from the void. The creature was down there even now, watching them. But the days passed without any contact. Chapter 7. Lise paced the creaking deck as dusk fell, dreading the message she knew was coming. It had been 2 months since the disastrous solo dive nearly ended everything. But despite constant vigilance and cooperation with the crew, definitive proof always danced just beyond their grasp. Promising sonar contacts would arise, only to fade upon closer inspection. Remarkable footage would inevitably turn out to be a play of light or a seal. It seemed as if the loch itself was concealing its mysteries now that they'd come so close. When her phone finally chimed with the Institute's number, Lise paused, closing her eyes and taking a deep breath before answering. We've given your effort every consideration, Lise, but it's time to conclude the survey, said Dr. Lambert. Lise felt the floor drop away, though she'd known this call was inevitable. But we've made real progress tracking anomalies deep down, she stammered. Dr. Lambert sighed. I'm sorry, my dear, but it's been over 2 months without anything substantive to show for it. No institute can fund operations indefinitely without results. We've been more than patient. Lise wanted to cry out that they were on the cusp, but she knew that would only make her seem unhinged. She had no choice but to concede. I understand. We'll start wrapping up operations and be ready to port in 72 hours, Lise replied steadily, despite feeling anything but composed. Wise choice. Your passion is commendable, Lise, but practical considerations must rule the day safe travels back. The line went dead. Lise gripped the railing, willing herself not to collapse in despair. After all the hope and planning, for it to end like this, she steeled herself and then called Robin and the others to the wardroom. That was Dr. Lambert. They're withdrawing support, so we'll be heading back soon, she informed them evenly. The team nodded in resignation, though still visibly disappointed. They'd worked hard together these past weeks and become invested, even as the challenges mounted. I'm proud of the effort we put in it, and grateful for your faith in me after past mistakes, Lise added somberly. Of course, Skipper, it was a hell of a try, Robin said, smiling wanly. The others murmured agreement and appreciation for her leadership. Lise was thankful for their grace despite this letdown. 3 more days of scans and we'll pack it in, Lise told them. I know it's a long shot, but who knows, it may be our final hours could still surprise us. She tried to sound upbeat. In truth, as Lise lay awake that night listening to the water lap the hull, she felt utterly drained and defeated. All her dreams dissolving back into the impenetrable mists. She'd failed her grandfather and herself. What did she have to show for it now except unanswered questions and debt? These bleak thoughts consumed Lise over the expedition's final days. She went through the motions on autopilot, supervising the crew breaking down gear, sealing up samples and specimens, only half listening as they laughingly reminisced over shared experiences and theories. On their last evening, Lise couldn't bring herself to join the others for a farewell toast on deck. As the sun dipped below the craggy hills, she slipped away to climb the winding, overgrown path up to Urquhart Castle's ruins. She'd always felt strangely at peace among the broken ramparts and crumbling towers overlooking the loch from its rocky perch. The last flickers of burnt orange faded from the clouds as Lise wandered alone, gently running her hands along the weather-beaten stone thoughtfully, saying goodbye. She visualized generations of defenders and invaders who'd also found purpose and belonging here over the centuries, all now lost to time. The rising moon illuminated Lise's solitary watch. As midnight neared, she made her way down the decaying steps to the water's edge where gentle waves lapped at the age-worn foundation. She peeled off her shoes and stepped gingerly into the frigid loch, wanting to feel its lifeblood coursing around her one last time. Suddenly, Lise glimpsed a small flashing light out in the middle of the vast loch. She stared harder. It looked almost like an underwater strobe or mini-sub running light. Curious, she rushed back to grab binoculars from her pack and returned to scan the night water. There it was again, a faint but distinct twinkling. Curiosity overtook sadness. If a submersible was adrift out there, she needed to retrieve it for the safety of other boats. This could be one small way to end things positively. Before she could second-guess herself, Lise was hurrying back to the research vessel to gear up for one final dive. Chapter 8. Lise opted to forego clumsy scuba gear for this quick recovery, instead donning just a wetsuit, mask, and waterproof flashlight. Finding the stray submersible's location again amid the vast loch would be difficult, but she noted the general direction off Urquhart Castle for reference. Better to slip into the water stealthily rather than wake the crew and have to explain herself, Lise reasoned. She launched a small inflatable raft to carry her swiftly across the still waters. The night air chilled her skin as the raft skimmed silently out from shore. Lise scanned the blackness intently once she cut the motor a mile from the castle, not wanting to overshoot her mark. For long minutes, she saw nothing except the craggy cliffside pale in the moonlight. Maybe it had just been her imagination after all. She was preparing to double back when suddenly the tiny flashing light winked on once more straight ahead. There it was, her last quarry. Lise slipped into the frigid water, gasping as the cold shocked her system. She treaded water for a moment, adapting to the temperature and her bearings. The seasons were shifting, Soon the loch would be lashed by winter gales rather than placid, as on this still November night. A towering fog bank was creeping in, she realized, seeing the castle lights vanish abruptly. She'd have to work quickly before visibility was lost completely. Lise switched on her flashlight and began a steady breaststroke towards the target. It was surprisingly easy to home in on the light's faint rhythm flashing beneath the surface. In just a few minutes, her light illuminated the boxy shape of one of their backup underwater cameras, either discarded or shed loose accidentally. Lise smiled behind her mask, happy to be leaving the loch with this small memento of their efforts. She tread water down to 15 feet and grabbed the metal frame, now to just make it back to shore and preserve what little film might be left. As Lise ascended slowly, weighted camera in hand, visibility worsened rapidly, only her flashlight beam penetrating the opaque fog now. She was essentially navigating blind, hoping she remained on course toward the unseen shore. Sudden vibrations rumbled through the water. Lise jolted, the sound of a large boat's engines very close by. She curled into a ball as the rumbling grew, worried she'd be run over. But the din soon receded again. At least she could follow its fading path now, to orient herself. Keeping one hand on the camera, Lise resumed her steady swimming. Without warning, something lashed hard against Lise's ankle, nearly pulling her under. She kicked against it wildly, straining to keep hold of the camera with one hand. Had she stupidly swum right into loose netting or cables? Lise finally shook herself free and turned to shine her light at whatever had ensnared her. Only an undulating cloud of murk met the beam. She turned and swam faster, wanting desperately to escape this claustrophobic fog. But the creature had her scent now. It rose from the depths swiftly, drawn by the thrashing struggles of its trapped prey. Slitted eyes flashed emerald in the swirling gloom. It had eluded these intruders long enough. Chapter 9. Dawn's first pale glow backlit the distant mountains as Lise's crewmates stirred anxiously, realizing she hadn't returned to her bunk all night. Robin paced the deck, cursing himself for not intervening, when she slipped off alone again after they'd toasted farewells. What was Lise thinking, pulling another reckless stunt now? He trusted her promise not to take unnecessary risks. Can't get a signal on her phone either, Craig grumbled, snapping his own shut in frustration. Bad feeling about this. We need to start searching now. Robin tried to quell the dread rising within him. There had to be some logical reason for Lise's absence. But deep down, he knew their friend and leader was in grave danger after yet another impulsive late-night jaunt onto the loch alone. You're right. No time to waste. Take the Zodiac and start circling near Urquhart, Robin directed Craig. She was up on the castle ruins last night, maybe snooping around underwater nearby. Radio back anything suspicious immediately. As Craig raced off, Robin turned to the remaining two crewmates. Scan all radio channels for a distress call and keep trying her cell. I'll contact the authorities. They scrambled to their emergency stations. Gazing back at the castle silhouetted against the brightening sky, Robin said a silent prayer they weren't already too late. An hour later, rescue boats and divers were combing the waters near Urquhart Castle. But no trace of Lise had yet been found. As sunlight danced brighter atop the ripples, a call came over the radio from Craig. There's something you need to see back at the research boat. I'm on my way, he crackled. Robin felt his stomach tighten anxiously. What now? When Craig motored up to port clutching a battered underwater camera, Robin feared the worst. Found this floating 100 yards offshore, Craig panted. "Playback's damaged, but I think she's in there." Robin rushed below decks to access their media lab, Craig following right behind. With shaking hands, Robin connected the camera and loaded the choppy file fragments. Everyone crowded around in grave silence. At first, all that appeared on screen was a light swaying back and forth, illuminating nothing but hazy green darkness. Then suddenly Liza's pale face flashed into view behind her mask, as if adjusting the camera. Robin's heart clenched, seeing the fear in her wide eyes. The camera jerked rapidly, and Lise gave a muted scream. Something had her. As she kicked and flailed, the flashlight beam revealed a fleeting glimpse of leathery hide and long, sinuous form, before cutting out completely. "Sweet mercy, no, was that? It can't be," Robin whispered, hands trembling. The crew stared hollowly at the blank screen. Craig solemnly lifted the damaged camera. "This thing was nearly crushed, but I'll stake my life that we briefly saw Nessie on this tape," he declared. "It seems she wanted one final glimpse." Robin's mind reeled, praying Lise had somehow escaped and was stranded injured, waiting to be rescued. Because the alternative was too terrible. Had their obsession led her to become the Loch's latest victim? Its secrets still safely guarded? The search resumed with dire urgency, but uncovered no further clues. As sunset approached, faint hopes faded. Lise was declared lost beneath the cold waves, like so many drawn before her through the centuries to that timeless realm of secrets. Robin again pictured her haunting frozen image on the recovered footage, immortalized in her final fatal pursuit. "Your quest wasn't crazy, my friend, but the risks we all took," Robin murmured, gazing out across the dark waters as the ship turned for home without Lise. Maybe some mysteries should remain unsolved. Epilogue. In the months following Lise's disappearance, life slowly carried on for her friends and loved ones now haunted by her absence and the cryptic events surrounding it. The recovered footage was scrutinized globally by experts, but provided no definitive proof of any creature's existence in Loch Ness. As is often the case, the fleeting images and suffering only bred further questions. Angus retreated into himself, overwhelmed by the tragic outcome of an expedition inspired by his own decades-old sighting. In his final years, he shared the tale that had launched Lise's imagination and ambition only sparingly, with a wistful gleam in his eye. When asked if he still believed in monsters, his response was always the same: "Best we accept some mysteries are not ours to solve." Robin and the others eventually found research posts back at the university, but a lingering sense of disquiet shadowed them. Had their faith in science been naive? On his darkest days, Robin wondered if encouraging Lise's pursuit had been a mistake. But he knew she never would have rested without trying. She had danced with her obsession, consequences be damned. A frightening and thrilling way to live. James Harwell funded other marine expeditions over the years to honor Lise's memory, though cryptozoology no longer captured his imagination as before. The public's fevered speculation around Lise's case gradually faded to whispers. But her unresolved fate endured as part of Loch Ness lore, a cautionary tale underscoring the dangers of obsessive belief. Decades later, small cruises still depart daily from Brackla across the loch, packed with tourists gazing expectantly at its glassy surface. Cameras ever ready to capture a fleeting shadow in the water, or perhaps even the graceful neck of a long-dormant sea creature rising anew. The end.